Hey everybody, Chris Andresen here from the Bike Hub. I want to talk to you about e-bikes and how they're going to change your ride.
I've been running wild. Now you've done it again, done it again. I wrote it all down. When you said amen, you said amen.
Today I want to talk to you guys about e-bikes, but not just e-bikes, mountain e-bikes, and in this case, full suspension mountain e-bikes. Everybody's seen a lot about these things. Companies have been pretty heavily invested in kind of moving toward this e-bike crave. So the last year and a half or so, I've owned several e-bikes. I've spent a lot of time on them, and I want to kind of tell you my experience and kind of the breakdown of it. First, let's kind of talk about the bikes. This is with a Trek. This is called the Powerfly 9.7. This bike was released for 2019. I've spent quite a bit of time on this bike. One of the main things that we researched and studied and did a lot of riding on was actually the motors and the motor technology. The big thing that we are very proud of and we're happy about is that Trek and Giant has partnered with some of the biggest companies for electric motors in the world, Bosch, Yamaha, and Shimano, which is really important for us on a service standpoint. We want to be able to make sure these bikes are going to last when we get them out on the trails, but we also want to make sure in the long term that we're able to service it. And those companies are very, very committed to make sure that these bikes are going to be running and the motors are going to be strong for years and years to come. So one is you're looking for e-bikes or you're interested, try to stick with those big companies. There's a lot of motor companies out there. In the long term, it could be really difficult to get parts and keep those on the trails. Two, there's a couple key things that kind of separates an e-bike from a regular bike other than just the motor. One thing, the bikes are quite a bit heavy. Most of these bikes are going to say around 50 pounds. In order for these bikes to be that weight and be great performance on the trail, you need brakes to support that. So most of these bikes will all come with basically a 4-piston trailer downhill style brake to them. This particular one has a great Shimano brake that I've been really impressed with. It has tons of power to it. They use oversized rotors, at least 8-inch, sometimes a 7-inch rotor in the back, but plenty of braking power to stop a bike that's around 50 pounds or so from coming down the hill. The other thing that was kind of really unique too is all of the chains, they use kind of an e-bike specific change. Because there's so much torque going into these bikes with whatever you can produce, but also the motor can produce, we need something that's going to be quite a bit stronger. So they're not just throwing an average chain on there. There's actually a very strong chain that's durable and they can last for the long time on it. So last but not least, let's talk about tires. Being a bike that's quite a bit heavier, you're going to have some pretty rugged tires on here. So all the tires are going to have some kind of like a double-walled casing or downhill style casing. In my case, I've actually ran some tire protection in there. I've used some Cush core to protect the wheels. I've also used a Huck Norris strips and stuff like that, just to keep the tires from getting beat. Having that extra, let's say 15 pounds on the bike, it does run a little heavier down the trail, so it makes their wheels get beat up pretty good. Next step I want to talk to you guys about is kind of the pros of what an e-bike is on the trail, my experiences with that, and also what e-bikes aren't. One of my favorite thing, and the thing that I've always been trying to figure it out, is how can I get to the top of the hill with less energy so I can focus on always going downhill. Racing in downhill and enduro, I love going downhill. And most people that are buying trail bikes and enduro bikes today are actually buying the bike for the downhill experience. They need a bike that's capable of getting uphill, but really they just want to go downhill and focus on it. If that wasn't the case, then we'd all have XC hardtails, right? So this is kind of like your chairlift of the mountain. So I can get twice as many downhill laps in a single day in a much smaller time frame than ever before. I ride Beacon Hill quite a bit here in town. I'm able to go to the top of that 6 or 7 times, do 2 or 3 minute runs down with a ton of energy because I'm not wasting myself going up the hill. And I can pack that into an hour and a half. So I can get twice as much riding in on a bike like this, which is super awesome. The weight, that's the number 2 thing. I always hear, oh my God, they're so heavy, they're not light. The The weight actually is awesome in the fact that when you take these bikes downhill, it gives you a really stable platform. They're not putting the weight in a real awkward place. They really center the weight in the down tube and low to the bottom bracket. So you have this really balanced bike that really presses and corners into it. It's also too, I've taken a lot of beginner level riders out on these bikes that maybe won't mountain bike because it's hard to go uphill or they're scared to go downhill. The stability of the weight allows them to go down and feel confident. They're not flipping over the bars. It's just a better experience for it overall. Number 3 kind of pros to an e-bike is technical climbing, which is sometimes a lot of people love it. That's just what they're into. I like get to the top of the hill, but it's only to go downhill. But now I'm actually really enjoying finding challenging climbs to go up, and they're super fun. So you find a really steep section that no way you're gonna ever make on your regular bike. You can go up there and crush it on an e-bike, and it's still hard. Your heart rate's through the roof while you're doing it. Number 4, which is probably one of my favorite things, is I'm able to ride every day, even days where I'm just smoked and I don't have anything left in the tank because I had a big day. I can grab the e-bike, get out there, get to the top of the hill again, and keep riding. So it's actually sometimes can be my active recovery day that I'm actually still out there riding, but it's awesome to be able to like, hey, I'm tired, I can boost my power up on the motor, gets me to the top of the hill so I can enjoy some more downhill. Next thing I want to talk about with these e-bikes are what e-bikes are not. A lot of people have a perception of what these things are and what they're not. I want to go through those. Number 1 is these things do not tear up trails. There's no throttle on these bikes. You don't grab it like a dirt bike and there are wheels like ripping things up. That's not the case. The tire's not during burnouts or anything like that. So they're not tearing the trails up. Number 2, these are not for lazy people. That's the perception is like, oh, you're lazy, you're not earning your turns. Well, that's not the truth at all. I've actually done a lot of riding on these things. I track a lot of the data. I found that my heart rate is almost exactly the same on my e-bike ride versus my other ride. The only difference is sometimes my legs aren't as blown out at the end of the ride. Number 3 is the fact that these things don't go uphill fast enough to ever run into another user group or another mountain biker. So traditionally I'm going to climb up a hill between 3 to 5 to 6, maybe 9 miles per hour, depending on the grade of the hill. This thing on average, you're going to be climbing between 8 to maybe 11 or 12 miles per hour. So we're only talking about a little faster. So it's not like they're going up at 50 miles per hour where you're going to run into a hiker or anything like that. So the perception that these things are going uphill so fast that you're going to run into somebody is completely 100% false. I think I've done enough talking about the bikes. I think it's time for Josh and I to head up the hill and kind of show you what these things are all about.